The restaurant was quiet, filled with warm lights and soft music. People talked, laughed, and enjoyed their meals. At one small table near the window, a human man sat across from an alien girl. Her name was Lyra, and she had soft blue skin with tiny glowing freckles on her cheeks. Her eyes were wide and bright, always watching, always learning. It was her first dinner with a human male. She had come to Earth as a cultural exchange student. He was chosen to guide her. His name was Ethan, kind and calm, always smiling. Their meal had been full of small talk. She had asked many questions about food, people, the reason humans wore shoes inside restaurants. Ethan answered everything with patience. Lyra seemed smart, but her thoughts were shaped by her homeworld's traditions, which were very different. When the meal ended, the waiter came and placed a paper bill gently between them. Ethan picked it up, glanced at the numbers, and smiled. Politely, "I'll get mine," he said, pulling out his wallet. Then he looked at her and added, "You can pay your half." Lyra blinked, once, then twice. Her face didn't change much, but her eyes shimmered like water. For 3 full seconds, she didn't move. "You want me to pay," she said slowly, as if each word was a strange object she had never touched before. "Just your half," Ethan said casually, thinking it was normal. Lyra looked down at the paper. It meant nothing to her. On her planet, this moment would be impossible. On Valeria, when a male invited a female to eat, it was always the male who paid. Not just because of money, but because it showed power, care, and honor. Splitting the cost was unheard of, even rude. "Do you not have enough?" she asked, suddenly concerned. "I can inform the government if you're in need." Ethan laughed softly. "No, it's not about that. It's just normal here. We usually share the cost, especially on a first dinner." Lyra leaned back in her chair. Her hands stayed still, but inside her mind, everything was turning fast. She thought of her sister's advice. Watch closely. Humans are not like us. This man was friendly, yes, but now she wondered, was he not truly a male? Or did human males follow no customs? "I thought males provided food," she said in a small voice. Ethan didn't understand the weight of her words. "Sometimes, but we believe both people are equal, so we share." Lyra didn't answer. She just reached into the small pouch she carried and placed a coin on the table. It wasn't Earth money, but a gift coin from her planet. "This," she said, "would feed 10 people on Val." Ethan looked at it, amazed. "That's beautiful, but it's not needed here." Still, she left it there. She picked up the paper bill and studied it like it was a strange puzzle. "So, this number is how much I owe?" "Yes, just half," Ethan said again. Lyra nodded slowly, then stood up. "I need air," she said. She walked outside without waiting. Outside, she touched a tiny chip behind her ear. It lit up softly. "Sister," she whispered, "I think the male is confused. He told me to pay for myself. Should I be worried?" A soft voice answered, "Observe. If he is weak, avoid further bonding. If he is dangerous, report him." Lyra looked back through the window. Ethan was still sitting there, drinking water, looking peaceful. He didn't chase her. He didn't explain. He looked, calm, she whispered. "He is not weak, but he is something else." Back inside, she returned and took her seat. Ethan smiled again, feeling better. "Yes," she said quietly. They finished the evening with soft talk again, but something had changed. Lyra was more careful with her words now. Her mind was full of thoughts. She wanted to understand his ways, but she wasn't sure if she agreed. Back home, her people would never respect a male who didn't provide food. But here, maybe things were different. When the night ended, Ethan walked her to the station. He waved goodbye with a gentle smile. Lyra stood there, not waving back, just watching him walk away. She touched the coin in her hand, the one he didn't accept. In her mind, a question repeated over and over again. Is this how human males show strength? By sharing instead of giving. And even more strange, why did her heart feel warm instead of cold? The next morning, Lyra sat in her room staring at a steaming cup of earth tea. She didn't drink it. She just watched the little swirls of heat rise into the air. Her thoughts were not still. The human male, Ethan, had done something she had never seen before. He had smiled while asking her to pay. He had walked away with no pride, no proof of power, and yet he didn't seem weak. That confused her the most. On Valeria, males proved their value with action, paying, offering, protecting. A male who split a meal bill would be seen as lacking honor, but Ethan didn't look like someone without honor. He was calm, polite, gentle, and somehow, in that strange calmness, he had done something powerful. She opened her datapad and began recording a private log for her personal archive. Date: 3rd cycle, Earth month, July. Subject: human male interaction. Initial impressions: unpredictable. Behavior during meal did not match male pattern norms. Possible cultural error. Further observation required. She paused and tapped her fingers on the edge of the pad. Emotionally stable. Smile: frequency, high. Confidence, steady. Expression: after cultural conflict. No signs of shame or apology. Not weak, not aggressive. Something else. She closed the log and stood up. The tea had gone cold. Lyra walked outside and followed the quiet path through the Earth town. The roads were strange, with rolling cars and blinking lights. People waved at each other with quick hands. She passed a small flower shop and saw a boy handing a flower to a girl. The girl giggled. The boy ran away. Lyra blinked. That looked familiar. On her world, gifts were the start of bonding. But on Earth, it seemed different. Not always gifts. Sometimes just laughter. She walked further and saw Ethan sitting on a bench near the park. He had a book in his hands, old and made of paper. When he saw her, he smiled and waved. "Hey, you're up early," he said. "I am collecting data," she replied. He laughed softly, still trying to understand us. "I must," she said, sitting beside him. "You confuse me." He raised an eyebrow. "Good confusion or bad confusion?" "Unknown," she said truthfully. They sat in silence for a moment. Birds chirped in a tree above them. Lyra looked at the sky. "On my planet, males are expected to prove themselves, by action, by offering food, safety, or shelter. How females do not pay." Ethan nodded slowly. "Makes sense. I mean, different cultures, right? But on Earth, many of us think differently now. We believe both people should share things: costs, work, everything. It's not about who pays. It's about respect." Lyra turned her head slightly. "But if there is no action, how does one prove care?" Ethan thought about it. "We listen. We show up when it matters. We talk honestly. And yeah, sometimes we pay too, but we don't think it makes someone more male or more female." She looked down at her hands. "So, it is not weakness." "Not at all," Ethan said. "It's a different kind of strength, like holding space for someone, or letting them speak first." Lyra stared at him. Her people never measured strength that way, but something about his words made her feel still inside. Then Ethan smiled again and stood up. "Wanna join me?" Was about to visit the old market street. "They've got music and strange snacks." She nodded. "I will observe more." As they walked side by side, Lyra noticed something strange. No one stared at her. People smiled, nodded, moved on. On her planet, a human would be surrounded with questions. Here, everyone just accepted. At the market, Ethan bought a strange round food wrapped in leaves. He handed it to her. "This one's on me," he said with a grin. "No split." She tilted her head. "Is this a gift?" "Kind of. It's just friendly." She took it with both hands and held it carefully. On Valeria, accepting food from a male had meaning. She wasn't sure what it meant here, but something warm moved through her chest again. A soft feeling, like wind under wings. They walked together through the stalls. She didn't ask more questions. She just watched. He talked to people easily, helped an old woman carry a bag, picked up a child's toy and returned it. Small things, no big gestures, but they were actions too. Just not the kind her world expected. Later that night, she recorded another log entry. Subject continues to display unusual form of strength. Does not follow Valerian protocol, yet continues to show signs of value. Human males may measure respect through balance and kindness instead of status. Observation continues. I am unsure, but curious. She paused, her fingers hovering over the end button. Then she added, in a much softer voice, "He makes me feel safe, even without offering gifts." And for the first time, she smiled while closing the log. The sun was still low when Lyra woke up to a quiet tone on her communicator. A message had arrived from her sister back on Valaria. The voice was soft but firm, carrying the usual weight of tradition and duty. "Your silence is noticed. We remind you, males must show offerings. Test him if you are unsure. Use the trial of measure. Observe his reaction and decide. Culture must not bend. Lyra stood by the window of her Earth guest room, staring out at the empty street below. The message sat heavy in her heart. She had not responded for 2 days because she didn't know what to say. Ethan didn't follow the traditions she grew up with, yet he didn't feel wrong. He didn't feel weak. He felt honest. She opened her datapad and reviewed the instructions for the trial of measure. It was simple. Invite the male into an unexpected test. Observe his behavior. No tricks, no danger. Just reveal his choices and decide his value. Lyra sighed. She didn't want to test him, but her people were watching, waiting for her report. So she sent a message to Ethan. Meet me near the river garden. I want to show you something new. Later that afternoon, Ethan arrived exactly on time. He was wearing the same warm smile, holding 2 bottled drinks. Thought you might want this, he said, handing her one. She accepted it. Is this a gift? Ethan laughed. If you want it to be. They walked toward the edge of the garden, where flowers from Earth and other planets were planted in neat rows. Lyra took him toward a quiet area, where 3 stone circles were placed in the grass. This, she said, is a space I've prepared for a Valerian custom. A small test, not dangerous. Ethan raised his brows in interest. Test, like a game. Lyra looked at him carefully. Not a game, a trial. You must choose between 3 things. Each one shows a different value. I will explain, and you will decide without asking questions. Ethan nodded slowly. Sounds mysterious. All right, I'm in. She pointed to the first stone. On it was a wrapped food packet, a gift from her planet. This is offering, she said. It represents giving. Choosing this shows a male who knows how to provide. The second stone held a small metal mirror. This is reflection. Choosing this shows a male who seeks self-understanding before action. The third stone was empty, just smooth stone. This is balance. It shows one who accepts the moment without needing to prove anything. Ethan looked at all 3, and I pick one. Yes, no discussion. Just feel it, then sit with your choice. He walked slowly around the stones. Lyra watched every movement, how he looked at the food, how he tilted the mirror, how he touched the empty stone. He sat down at the third stone, the empty one. Lyra blinked. This was rare. Most males picked offering, hoping to impress. Some picked reflection to seem deep. Few ever chose balance. It was the most uncertain, the quietest of the 3. Ethan looked up at her. I don't know if I was supposed to pick that, but it felt right. I don't need to prove anything today. Lyra sat across from him. Why not offering? Because I already gave you something before we came, he said simply. Not to pass a test, just because I wanted to. She nodded. Slowly, in reflection. I reflect every day. But I don't always need a mirror for that. Lyra felt something shift inside her. She had performed this test before. Back home. The answers were often loud, full of pride. But Ethan's answer was quiet. It held no drama, no big meaning, just truth. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind move through the tall grass. Ethan broke the silence. You don't really believe I failed, do you? She looked at him, then looked away. No, I think you answered in a way I didn't expect. That is more powerful than pretending to understand my ways. He smiled, but this time it was a gentler smile. Thanks. Honestly, I'm learning too. I've never met someone who could test me without asking a single hard question. Lyra stood up and offered her hand. Come, let me show you the blue fountain. It was built with songs. He took her hand without hesitation as they walked. Lyra opened a silent message log in her mind. She didn't speak it aloud. She just thought the words. Trial complete. Human male chose balance, not offering, not reflection. I do not know what the council will say, but I feel no need to explain him anymore. I will keep watching, but not for my report. I will watch because I want to. And for the first time in many days, Lyra's heart felt light. Like maybe, just maybe, not all strength had to be shown in the ways she was taught. The sky was pale, with soft clouds as Lyra walked slowly through the Earth Botanical Center. She moved between rows of strange flowers, some with curling petals, some with no scent, and some that changed color under sunlight. She had never seen such quiet beauty before, but today, her thoughts were louder than the garden. She sat on a wooden bench near a quiet pond and pulled out her datapad. Messages from her planet filled the screen. Some were from students, others from elders, but one stood out. It was marked with a golden seal. A council member had written her. The message said, "You have been on Earth long enough. The experiment was short-term. Your reports are incomplete. If the human male does not meet Valerian values, you must return. Emotion cannot be your guide." Lyra read it twice. Then again, her fingers hovered over the reply button, but didn't press it. Emotion cannot be your guide. But wasn't emotion the thing that made someone choose kindness without asking? Wasn't emotion the reason she had started to notice the small things Ethan did? Yesterday, when the air was cooler, he had brought her a scarf knot as a gift, but just because it looked like her. When she had been quiet, he didn't push questions. When she was confused, he waited, not with pride, not with judgment, just presence. That kind of behavior didn't match the lists her planet gave her, but it matched something inside her. She closed the datapad and stood up. She needed answers, but not from her planet. From him. Ethan was sitting at the corner of a busy sidewalk cafe when she found him. He was sipping a strange earth drink with bubbles in it. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Lyra, you're glowing today." "I am not glowing," she said quickly, but a smile appeared anyway. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Join me." She sat down and looked straight at him. "I have a serious question." "Okay. Why didn't you offer more during our first meeting? Why didn't you try to impress me?" Ethan blinked, surprised by the sudden question. "Because I thought we were just two people sharing a moment. I didn't think I had to perform. I wanted to be myself." She studied him. "On Valeria, males must show value clearly. You didn't. I know. But where I come from, showing off can feel fake. I'd rather show my value over time, through small things, like splitting the bill." She asked, her tone light but curious. He chuckled. "Yeah, I guess. I see it like this. If I trust you enough to eat with you, I trust you enough to treat you like an equal. Sharing the cost isn't about money. It's about respect." Lyra tilted her head. "On my planet, offering food is a form of strength. Males bring food to show they can protect." Ethan leaned forward. "And on Earth, some of us believe protecting means listening, making space, not controlling." She thought about that. No one on her world ever spoke about strength like that. But maybe strength had more than one shape. Then Ethan said, something unexpected. "You know, when you brought me to that trial circle, I knew you were testing me." Her eyes widened. "You knew, of course, but I didn't mind. I liked it. I just wanted to give you my honest self. I wasn't trying to win. I was just trying to be real." That quiet answer wrapped around Lyra's heart like a slow breeze. She had tested him by the old rules. He had passed by creating new ones. Suddenly, she stood up. "Come with me. There's something I need to show you." They walked together to the cultural center, where a small Earth Valerian exhibit was displayed. She brought him to a panel showing her people's traditional expectations, offerings, symbols of strength, rules of bonding. She pointed at one of the rules. "This says, a male must provide, or he cannot lead." Ethan read it slowly. "Do you believe that?" "I used to," she said. "Now, I'm learning." He looked at her with a softness that made her feel both safe and nervous. Learning what that maybe leading isn't about being in front. Maybe it's about walking beside. They stood there in silence, watching the symbols of her world, and the quiet reflection of his world behind the glass. As they left the center, Lyra didn't record any report that night. She didn't open her datapad. Instead, she looked at the sky and whispered to herself, "He doesn't carry me. He walks with me." That might be stronger than anything I was taught. And in that simple moment, she began to wonder if the reason she was sent to Earth wasn't to test him, but to rediscover what strength really meant. Rain tapped gently on the window of the cafe as Lyra sat quietly, watching tiny rivers run down the glass. She stirred the warm drink in front of her, not because she wanted to drink it, but because it gave her hands something to do. Across the table, Ethan was reading something on his small device. Every so often, he'd smile and share something funny with her. But today, Lyra was distant. Inside her pocket, her datapad buzzed with a message she hadn't opened yet. She already knew what it said. Her planet had sent someone, not a soldier, not a threat, but someone far more complicated. Drolith. From her home city, a male who had been trained in proper tradition. He was tall, confident, always dressed in perfect layers of cloth and meaning. Back home, he had once asked to bond with her. She had said no, not because he was unworthy, but because he never asked her what she wanted. She finally opened the message. "Arrival confirmed. Rolith will meet you today before school end. His task is simple. return you to Valeria. Do not resist. Lyra's eyes didn't move. She simply closed the pad and placed it on the table between her and Ethan. He looked up. Bad news. She didn't answer immediately. A guest is coming. Someone from my world. Ethan nodded slowly. Friend. Lyra's voice was quiet. Someone who thinks he knows what's best for me. Ethan's smile faded a little. He leaned in, gently. Do you want to see him? She shook her head. No, but he will come anyway. He believes I've been away too long, that I've become ... different. Ethan didn't press her. He just looked at her, the way he always did. Not with questions, not with judgment, just quiet understanding. Later that evening, they walked together to the city square, where small lights floated in the air and music played softly from glowing speakers. People danced slowly in the open air, even in the light rain. Lyra kept her arms close to her body. She didn't feel like dancing, and then she saw him. Raleth stood near the edge of the fountain, tall and elegant in his Valerian robes, his silver badge of honor shining in the rain. His eyes locked onto hers immediately. He walked toward her without hesitation. Lyra, he said, you look well. Earth has changed your appearance. I've simply worn less armor, she replied. There is no need for it here. Raleth turned to Ethan, measuring him with a calm gaze. So this is the one, the human male. Ethan extended a hand politely. Nice to meet you. Raleth didn't take it. Lyra stepped slightly between them. Raleth, this is Ethan. He has been kind, he has been fair. Raleth's voice was smooth. Kindness is easy when there are no trials. Has he offered for you? Has he provided shelter? Has he made any true effort? Lyra's face tightened. He has offered peace. He has shared ideas. And he has never tried to own me. Raleth looked surprised. Ownership is not the same as guidance. You've lost your clarity, Lyra. Sent to bring you home. We will leave in the next rotation. Ethan didn't interrupt. He looked at Lyra, waiting for her to decide. She took a step back and breathed slowly. Her thoughts raced. Should she obey the rules she grew up with? Should she return home and forget all the small lessons, the slow understandings, the quiet respect she found here? She turned to Ethan. Will you say something? He looked at her calmly. Only if you ask me to. I won't decide for you. That answer did something inside her. She turned back to Raleth. He may not carry honor stones, he may not follow our rules, but every moment I've spent with him has felt like a choice, not a lesson, not a duty, and right now, I choose to stay. Voice was quiet. Then I must report your failure. Lyra raised her head. Then report it. Raleth didn't speak again. He simply turned and walked into the mist, his robe trailing behind like a memory. Ethan walked beside her as they made their way back. Neither of them said much, but after a while, she stopped and looked at him. You said once that sharing was respect. Today, I understand that. Ethan smiled gently. I'm glad. That night, she opened a message to her planet but didn't send it. She only wrote one sentence before closing the pad. I did not fail. I chose, and for the first time, she felt like her own path had finally started. Asterisk, the stars were dim behind a layer of soft clouds, and the air on Earth felt cooler than usual. Lyra sat on the rooftop of the Earth Cultural Building, wrapped in a simple blanket. Lights from the city below flickered like fireflies, and the soft hum of faraway music floated in the wind. She held her datapad in both hands. She had opened the council's secure message, but hadn't responded. It sat there, glowing in silence, waiting for her answer. The message was short but final. If you do not return within 2 cycles, your status will be marked as culturally compromised. You will lose official ranking. Retrieval will be initiated. Retrieval.id wasn't force, not yet, but it meant her choice would no longer matter. They would come for her. She heard the rooftop door open. A soft set of footsteps followed, calm and steady. Ethan. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat beside her, his presence quiet and comfortable. After a moment, she turned the screen toward him. He read the message without speaking. Then he simply asked, "How does that make you feel?" "Like I'm 2 people," she whispered. One who wants to do what she was trained to do, and one who wants to stay and find out who she really is. Ethan nodded. That sounds like someone on the edge of something important. She closed the pad and looked at him. I've never failed a mission before. You still haven't, he said. Trying to understand another world, that's not failure. They sat in silence for a while, and then Lyra spoke again, softer this time. If they come for me, I may not get to decide. Ethan's eyes were steady. Then, let's make your time here count. Tell me everything, not what your counsel expects, just what you feel. She hesitated, but then she began to speak. She told him about the traditions of Valeria, the first offering, the tests of worth, the meaning behind each ritual. She told him about her family, her early training, and how males were expected to lead through display. She told him how her people measured love through protection, not partnership. And then she told him about the first time he confused her, that simple moment at the restaurant when he had passed her the bill. I thought you were joking, she said. I almost laughed, but then I saw your face. You weren't being unkind, you were being normal. Ethan listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. I didn't understand then, she continued, but I do now. You were respecting me, not testing me, not proving anything, just letting me be part of the choice. He smiled. That's how I see connection, not power, just presence. She looked up at the sky. I want to tell them, the council, I want to tell them you didn't make me weak. You helped me find something new, a kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud. Ethan looked at her carefully. Then let's tell them, together. The next day, Lyra requested a private channel with the Valerian High Council. It was unusual, it was bold, but they approved. Inside the Earth Valeria communications chamber, Lyra stood in front of a glowing screen. Ethan stood beside her, silent. The council appeared as a panel of shimmering faces, projected through mist-light. Their voices came in sequence. You have chosen to delay return. You have ignored protocol. You have bonded with a non-Valerian male. Lyra didn't step back. She kept her voice calm. I have not broken the law. I have followed the mission. Learn, observe, and report. This is my report. They allowed her to continue. She spoke about everything she'd seen, but not like a list. She spoke from the heart. She told them how Earth males could show strength through stillness, through listening, through equality. She explained that gifts were not the only form of care, that sharing was not weakness, that human partnership, though strange, had its own kind of order. When she finished, the council was silent for many moments. Then one voice said, "And do you now believe Earth culture is superior?" Lyra shook her head. "No, I believe it is different. And difference is not a threat, it's a mirror." The council ended the call without reply. That was their way. Decisions would be made later. As the room dimmed, Ethan turned to her. "So, what happens now?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I do know this: whatever they decide, I made my own choice. Not as a student, not as a Valerian, as me." Outside, the sky was starting to clear. A single star peeked through the clouds, quiet and constant. For the first time in many rotations, Lyra didn't feel like she was caught between two worlds. She felt like she was finally standing in her own